I was so afraid to speak about anything. Honestly, it's the process of healing from sexual violence for me has been a process of overcoming terror. Like I was, especially with repressed trauma, like I was terrified when the memories came up. And then I was terrified about what it meant. And then I was terrified like the whole way through. And then getting to a point when I wanted to speak about it, I felt this like inner drive because I felt like I wanted to speak about it in my way, which is healing, but also I just felt like I hadn't heard people like articulate trauma. So we live in a world where everybody's always talking about trauma now, but I haven't heard people be like, "Oh, this is a trauma response." Like, for example, with stalking my stalker, it was like an example of hypervigilance. But I hadn't heard anybody articulate that and what it was like to live that because when I was doing that, I wasn't like, "I am hypervigilant right now." It was like I felt like I was a bit crazy, but I was in trauma brain where I feel like your brain's a bit broken. And so I was doing what I needed to survive. And so when I chose to speak about these stories, there was this inner, I always call it like my inner fire. The memories came back and it was all I could think about. Like I was like, my world was being turned upside down. It was like, wait, I was sexually assaulted as a child. Like, what? And I would talk about it. I would word vomit it to everybody. And
Yeah.
people didn't know what to do with me. So I
Yeah.
got every reaction you can get. And I was also surprised by the amount of people I knew in my life who were like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And I was like, you too? Why haven't we talked about this? Wait, this is a problem? How do you get over this? And so many people I talked to were kind of like, you don't talk about it. That's how you get over it. But all I could do was talk about it. All I could do was think about it. It was driving me absolutely crazy. So I knew that I had to find a different way
Yeah.
than repressing it again. I knew I couldn't put it, like I said, back in the box on the shelf. I had to look at the box. It was like this box fell off my shelf and I had to like go through it because there was no putting it back.
This episode contains discussions of trauma, abuse, and other potentially sensitive topics that may be activating for some listeners. Please take care while listening and pause if you need to. Your well being is what matters most. Hi, Amanda. Welcome to Life After Trauma.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to have you here. Amanda is the host of the New View Advice podcast, where she shares from her own journey as a survivor of trauma while offering reflections that help others feel less alone. Before we dive in, I'd love to set the stage for listeners with a little of your story. You've spoken openly about surviving sexual violence as a teenager and how memories of that time were repressed for years. In one of your reflections, you shared about the time one of the men who raped you got engaged and how that news caused an emotional storm that shook you to your core. And let me tell you, that episode is amazing and you should definitely go check it out. In another, you described the complicated feelings of shame and confusion that surfaced when in high school you found yourself stalking the person who was stalking you. These stories give us a glimpse into both the depth of the trauma and the complicated human ways our bodies and minds respond to it. Thank you for your courage in bringing these moments forward. They help so many survivors feel less alone. To begin, what was it like for you to first speak these truths out loud after years of silence?
Terrifying. The first, yeah, it was terrifying. I was so afraid to speak about anything. Honestly, it's the process of healing from sexual violence for me has been a process of overcoming terror. Like I was, especially with repressed trauma, like I was terrified when the memories came up. And then I was terrified about what it meant. And then I was terrified like the whole way through. And then getting to a point when I wanted to speak about it, I felt this like inner drive because I felt like I wanted to speak about it in my way, which is healing. But also, I just felt like I hadn't heard people like articulate trauma. So we live in a world where everybody's always talking about trauma now, but I haven't heard people be like, oh, this is a trauma response. Like, for example, with stalking my stalker, it was like an example of hypervigilance. But I hadn't heard anybody articulate that and what it was like to live that because when I was doing that, I wasn't like, I am hypervigilant right now. It was like, I felt like I was a bit crazy, but I was in trauma brain where I feel like your brain's a bit broken. And so I was doing what I needed to survive. And so when I chose to speak about these stories, there was this inner, I always call it like my inner fire. Like when I
Mhm.
need to say something, I'll usually get like really fiery and then I try to stamp it out because I get really afraid. And then there's like a part of me that's like, no, we're doing this. And then I do it and it's so relieving. Like
Yeah.
that's why I continue to do it is because now I've done it enough that I'm like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Like a weight is lifted when we get to speak our truth. But it took me a long time to get to a point where I felt safe enough to do that.
I completely agree with you. I know with my own story, I did not tell anybody anything for years. And then all of a sudden one day I was just like, I'm going to make a podcast.
That's my exact story because, like, yeah, I started New View Advice and I hadn't talked about most of this stuff with people. It was like I needed to find other people and I didn't know how to find other people. I don't know if you felt that way, but it was like by creating this platform, New View Advice, I was able to find people who saw me and who understood me, where in my own life I had struggled to find that.
Yeah, definitely. No, it went from like 0 to 100. I will tell no one and then I will tell the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree. I very much felt like I was alone in it. And while logically I knew that other people had gone through things, I didn't know anybody in my life who was dealing with the kind of stuff that I was dealing with. And yeah, so it was another level of healing to get to the point of being vulnerable to share your story and then having these people come and be like, "Wow, like I resonate with this so much." It's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you mentioned the loneliness piece because I like that you put the words to it that it's like logically we know. Like logically we Google it and there are other survivors. And you're like, okay. But when you don't know anybody or you haven't heard anybody, you still continue to feel alone and isolated because the experience within yourself is so extreme. Like, especially when you're consciously bringing it up to heal. Like for me, I struggled from repressed memories and that was my body's way of really trying to bury it. But once it came up, I couldn't suppress this anymore. Like, I would go to therapy and they'd be like, "Let's put this in the shelf on like, in your mind, put this memory on a shelf." And I'm like, "There is no shelf. Like, there is no box. This is coming up." And I think that's one of the things with repressed memories is I felt like it was suppressed for so long that or it was repressed for so long that once it was up, I couldn't use that box analogy sometimes they talk about. But, I forget what I was saying, sorry.
That's okay. Let me go into the next question because it's actually talking about repressed memories. So, how did those repressed memories begin to surface for you? And what did it feel like to finally face them?
So repressed memories for me resurfaced. The first part was through a dream. And so I tell the story actually in my reflection series. I think I mentioned this story, but I had gone to a Joe Dispenza retreat. I do credit this to part of it. So I went to a Joe Dispenza retreat and there was this meditation at the end and it was like, what do you want in your life? And for me, I had this secret shame that I didn't like sex. Like I hated sex. I couldn't connect to it. I checked out every time and I really wanted to. I had a loving partner and I couldn't figure out why I didn't like sex.
Yeah,
So like in my little meditation, I was like, I'd love to love sex.
yeah.
And so then 2 weeks later, I had this dream and I woke up from it and I was sobbing, crying. I was screaming, he touched me, he touched me. And I went and I vomited in the bathroom. It was
Oh,
such an extreme experience. I couldn't ignore it. It took me from that point, like 6 weeks to understand what had happened in that moment.
oh,
That was memories of child sexual abuse coming forward because then I continued to have dreams, then I started to have flashbacks. I felt like I was losing my mind. Like all of a sudden I was just seeing things that had been repressed. And so I started with the process of child sexual abuse and then when I felt better about that, but I still felt so depressed, I kept asking myself, why am I still depressed? Like, why? What is this? Apathy almost. And then the memories of my teen sexual assault came forward. And that was also initiated by a dream. But then it, again, for me, it starts becoming like I'm living in this old world. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's like it comes over forward in a dream. And then the memories start coming up where I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, I remember that. I didn't understand that at the time. Like
yeah.
little pieces where it's like, oh, like the puzzle starts getting put together, I guess. It's a confusing process. When it first came up for me, I Googled it and all I found were articles on how repressed memories aren't reliable, especially in court cases, which was very hurtful for me when I was going through my process because I wasn't looking to go through the court system. I was looking to just feel sane again. I was looking to understand what was happening to me. So it is a reason I started New View Advice is that I didn't hear people discussing. Sometimes I read stories and I can understand that's what they're saying without them blatantly saying it because I think it's something that it's hard to articulate.
Feels so discouraging though to come across that because in a way it's like invalidating your memories and then your experience because like so that's I totally understand why that would be so discouraging.
Yeah, The Body Keeps the Score was the first book I read that articulated repressed trauma in a way that I was like, that's exactly what I went through. So that book was really healing for me. And it's a classic when it comes to trauma for a reason. But it was very confusing to first reach out. And then I would reach out to basically the memories came back and it was all I could think about. Like I was like, my world was being turned upside down. It was like, wait, I was sexually assaulted as a child. Like, what? And I would talk about it. I would word vomit it to everybody. And
Yeah.
people didn't know what to do with me. So I
Yeah.
got every reaction you can get. And I was also surprised by the amount of people I knew in my life who were like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And I was like, you too? Why haven't we talked about this? Wait, this is a problem? How do you get over this? And so many people I talked to were kind of like, you don't talk about it. That's how you get over it. But all I could do was talk about it. All I could do was think about it. It was driving me absolutely crazy. So I knew that I had to find a different way than repressing it again. I knew I couldn't put it, like I said, back in the box on the shelf. I had to look at the box, right? It was like this box fell off my shelf and I had to like go through it because there was no putting it back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So what did you find like through that time of digging into that box that you found most supportive on that journey or that experience of digging in there?
Honestly, it was a really hard time because I learned a lot of wrong ways. Like, I found the wrong therapist. I talked to the wrong people. I felt so disconnected from everyone I it was really bad 6 months, and then I ended up, truthfully, again with a dream, and I had a dream where it was the exact opposite, where I felt what life was without trauma, and it was probably my body's, like, only way to get me to, like, commit to this journey of healing because my thoughts were really dark. Honestly, I've talked about it. I struggled with suicidal ideation for a long time. And that was probably one of the worst times of my life because I couldn't figure out how to get out of this hole. And I had this dream where I woke up and all my trauma was gone. It was like this divine joy. And it was all funny. It was like I realized none of it, like it all mattered, but it didn't have to like impact me. I don't know. I still can't really articulate it. But I went back to bed. I woke up, all the trauma was back, but I had the memory of what it felt like not to have that trauma anymore. And that sparked my faith journey where I just do believe that there's a higher power. I believe that there's more to life than we often articulate, especially here in the West, in North America. But it also sparked me finding EMDR, finding the right therapist. That was a huge part, finding ways to actually move this trauma out of my body and finding more somatic techniques.
Yeah, somatic therapy is pretty incredible. I find it so interesting. Like, I know we talked about the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And again, logically, I feel like we know this, but until you've actually experienced that feeling of feeling it move, it's quite powerful.
Yes, and what I enjoy about healing or what makes it a bit easier, I wouldn't say it's easy, but you find that when you start clearing out the layers, it moves a little quicker. You know, like the things that used to take me months to heal from, like it's probably a week, or like I can move through like a layer in a day, which is like a reality I dreamed of. I dreamed of a world where I'd never feel anything again after that dream I had. I realized that's not reality. But I do find that now that I have it's like we need the tools. Once you have the tools, you can move through things. But when you don't have the tools, it does take quite a long time. Especially at the beginning of my journey, I was very, very hard on myself. So I had to battle my own inner critic, my own self blame, my own shame. Where now, when things arise, it's easier for me to go into that compassionate place and be like, oh, I didn't realize I was still carrying this belief. Like, how
Yeah.
can I be kind to myself? How can I nurture myself? What age is like, did this belief come in? It's easier for me to go to that place. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts of healing is it's not that we become robots who don't feel. It's that we learn how to navigate all the complexities of the human experience and our emotions. And it's with like an awe. Like that's how I feel. Like when I'm able to move through something, I feel like this awe for myself where I'm like, oh my God, that's what it is to be human. Doesn't mean in the moment I feel that way. When it comes up, I'm like, gotta be kidding me. I feel this again. But when I move through it, it's like, ah, that's why I'm here. Like that's the joy of humanity is that I get to feel the spectrum of like the deepest hatred and also the deepest love. Like holy moly, what complex beings we are. And we almost try to like write that off in a lot of today's culture.
Yeah, I know. I love that you said it that way because I think just there are so many times where we really are at the lowest of low, and it's so easy to get stuck there and feel like you are going to feel that way forever. And you won't. You won't. I promise you won't. But it's so beautiful when you come out of it. It's so beautiful to realize that we have the capacity to feel so deeply in either way. I love that about being a human.
Yeah, I love that you say that too about the feeling it forever because it's humbling every time to have like a difficult feeling. Because to this day, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to feel like this forever. And it's like, no, you're not. You know this. And I like have to coach myself through it. But it's just part of being human that it kind of tells you about the present moment, right? Like the present moment feels like everything. And
Mhm.
it's not how life works. Like we want to be present for life, but we won't be where we are forever. We're always changing and life is always changing. And it changes quicker when we don't resist it so much.
Yeah, exactly. What surprised you about your body or mind's way of protecting you during that time?
I think the levels of I don't want this to sound self-critical, but like the levels of like self-delusion that I
Mm,
created. So the way that I learned to cope, I see now as like a middle schooler and a high schooler. Because in middle school, I experienced a lot of bullying.
mm,
I experienced a lot of bullying after I went through a trauma. I went through the death of a girl I knew. And I because of that, I just had all these ramifications in my life. But I created these beliefs about the world, like, oh, it wasn't so bad instead of allowing myself to have the full experience. So I was able to, I feel like, survive middle school and high school because I told myself it wasn't as bad as it was. But then here I am in my 20s and my 30s having to go back and feel all the feelings I suppressed because it was as bad as I thought.
yeah.
But I created these stories, like, that's what, like, it baffles me and, like,
Mm,
astounds me, like, the stories I told myself. Like, even in my freshman year, I was raped by a group of boys I went to school with, and I didn't really know the word rape, so I didn't know what word to put to it, and I told myself all these lies, like, I told myself they weren't that bad, like, they didn't mean to do it, crazy, like, I look back and I'm like, I wish I had an adult who sat me down and said, "This was really bad.
yeah.
You need to look at this." But instead, my world, the people I went to school with were like mirroring back to me that like I was a slut and things like that. So
Mm,
then I created narratives about the world that were just wrong. I put like a rose colored glass lens over the world. And that it's crazy how we can do that. Like we
yeah,
cannot live in reality. We can like create a
yeah.
fantasy to live in.
Do you think it's self-protection because you were not really able or capable in that moment to take in what happened to you?
Yeah, so part of the with the rose-colored glass thing is that I took on self-blame. Like I blamed myself for everything because it is a self-protective mechanism. It's if I blame myself, then I can control the situation. I can fix this situation.
Yeah.
Where instead of accepting something really horrible happened to me. And that would have caused me at the time for my worldview to break. So I grew up very wealthy in a community considered very safe, very loving, very like people aspire to live where I lived. And so it would have shattered my world to accept that no, I live in a violent town that nobody talks about, nobody's willing to talk about, and people will create lies and be violent against you if you try to talk about this. That
Yeah.
was something as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old girl, I could not do. I could not take on a town that would bury secrets.
Yeah.
Instead, I had to continue to tell myself I was crazy. Like, that's really what it was, is like anytime I came up against like a belief that questioned my safe, pretty bubble narrative, I was like, I'm crazy. I must be crazy. Like,
Yeah.
that's not real. And so I just began to deny reality. I guess that's another way of putting it. Like, the fantasy was denying the reality I lived in. And that has taken me a long time to unravel, to see the truth of the world I live in and the truth of, like, the world in general.
Yeah.
That, like, I feel like I grew up and I thought the world is a good place. And now I'm in a place where I'm like, the world is a neutral place. Like, you're
Yeah.
born into a world that's not good or bad. But by saying this is a good world where everybody wants me happy and safe wasn't actually serving me. I don't also want to live in a world where I say this is a horrible place where everybody's violent. That's not true either. But by trying to like choose a side wasn't it just I see now that that's something I've had to heal from.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. I remember in one of your reflection episodes I watched, you had mentioned that one of your, I think it was a girl that was your friend, came up to you and said that if you didn't stop talking about this, that um the one of the guys was going to hurt you.
Yeah, that was like, when I talk about repressed memories, like, that memory I always had. I
Yeah.
never lost the moment of this girl telling me that this guy was gonna kill me if I kept talking about what he did to me, and I never lost that, and I knew what I was saying about him. I knew I was saying that he had sexually assaulted me,
Yeah.
but I, like, told myself at the time after that specifically, I was like, "I'm crazy. I'm lying about this guy." I began to believe the narrative he fed me, right? We
Yeah.
see that in abusive situations where when people are gaslit or emotionally manipulated or groomed in ways that you begin to believe the narrative that somebody else is telling you over your own truth. So that caused me to disconnect from my body and to live in this, like, I lived up here, it feels like in a fantasy,
Yes.
and the healing journey is like coming back into your body, like connecting back, because that's where truth lives. But I didn't live there for so long because I didn't want to see the truth. Because the truth is, I think a lot of people don't heal because the truth is very hard. This was a very challenging journey to go on to be who I am today. Entirely worth it. I wouldn't have it any other way, but it's challenging. It's hard work.
It is definitely. For listeners who may be remembering trauma now, what words of compassion would you want to offer them?
First would be you're not crazy. I feel like it was the thought pattern for me the most was I felt so crazy. Also, you're not alone. And it's so funny because we talked about how logically you know things. Like, you logically know you're not alone, but you're not alone. And I can say I've been there too, where it's a very disorienting process, but the truth is the memories are coming up because I do believe that they're there because you're in a place where it's safe for the memory to come up. So we
Yeah.
suppress the memory because it's or repress the memory because it's so painful. It's like we're looking to survive. We're
Yeah.
looking to survive. It's a survival mechanism. And when the memories start to come up, it's because you're in a safe enough place. It's because you do have the tools. Even if you're like, I don't have the tools, you might just have the tool to ask for help. Or I
Yeah.
know people who were like sexually abused as children and then the memory came up in their teens and they're like, but I didn't have the tools then. And then I usually ask, but did you leave the abuser? Like, was the abuser still in your life? And they're like, oh, yeah, that person was. And the relationship with that abuser changed at the time. So the memory comes up as a way to protect you also because like real protection is when we like connect back to ourselves, I believe.
Yeah.
And so it's not punishing you, you're not crazy. It's challenging and all your feelings are valid, but it's because it's a safe time for you to begin that healing. And that's what we deserve. We all deserve to heal. I view it like a physical injury. If you break your leg, you want to heal it, you want to put it in a cast, you want to rest it. It's the same with emotional healing, it's the same with trauma. We need to give ourselves the time and attention, and we deserve that.
Yeah, exactly. You've said that healing helped you learn to trust yourself again. What did that look like, especially in the beginning?
So I know for me, and I've talked to other rape survivors, that after you've been raped, you wonder if you could ever trust yourself again because you blame yourself. Like, feeling like you can't trust yourself is almost a self blame thing because it's like, how did I get in this situation? And I've found through healing and through self compassion that it's taught me how to trust myself because the healing journey isn't linear and it's complicated where you'll have one memory come up or one feeling, and then you'll go somewhere else, and then you'll go back to that other thing, where it's learning to trust the process. It's learning to trust whatever arises. It's learning to trust yourself and how your body is communicating with you. And the more I healed, the more I realized how true that was, right? I can tell you that, but you won't know that until you go on your own journey and learn what self trust is for you. For me, it's trusting those emotions that arise, trusting when I'm talking to somebody and how I feel in my body is true for me. They can be
Mhm.
telling me something and I can be registering that's not true for me or I don't think they're being truthful. And they'll never tell me what they really meant, but I can trust myself in that moment. But that takes a long time. And for me, it took healing from the trauma and getting back in my body led me to be able to trust my body because for a long time the feelings were so overwhelming. I felt like my body was like punishing me. I felt like my body was crazy. And it was truly just trying to get me back inside of it.
Yeah. I love that you keep coming back to the body because I really think, like, on my own healing journey, that was one of the biggest moments for me was when I found meditation and yoga. And when I started those practices, I feel like that was probably the biggest start. Like the moment where I was like, okay, now the ball is finally starting to roll. And it was all about just coming back into my body. And I bring it back to learning how to be present because when we're stuck in survival mode, we can't really be present. We're constantly looking for where is the threat? What do we need to protect ourselves from? And there's no future planning either. Like we it's just like you can see moment by moment, but it's not being present. And so doing yoga and learning to meditate really allowed me to come back into my body and to feel the safety in my body and, just learn how to be present in the moment.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, for me, it started with meditation and I love yoga now. Yoga used to make me cry every time I did it. So I didn't like to do it, but that
Mhm,
was because there was so much there to be
mhm.
processed. The other process that I found really helpful in my healing over the past year is singing. It's
Oh,
similar. It gets you in your body and it's a really present practice to sing and to connect to like the different registers. And I do somatic singing, so it's connecting your body with the voice, so, like, using different exercises to be louder or quieter, but bringing the body into it, and I've just been surprised over and over again that when I'm there, like, a memory will just pop in my head of being told I'm too loud or something, and I'll just feel it move, and I'm like, "Dang, that's the body at work." Like, I'm connecting to the body, and it's just doing its thing. It's able to just, heal on its own if we get in that present moment.
that is so cool. I've never heard of somatic singing. I love that.
I know, I hadn't either. I was blessed that I found this woman. It was, like, on an off chance, and yeah, it's highly recommend.
Very cool. When you felt self-doubt or wondered if your memories were real, how did you hold yourself through that?
That is learning self-compassion and the inner child work.
Mhm.
Because oftentimes, if I doubted myself, I'd be doubting this version of myself. But if I got into a meditation and I sat with the age that I was doubting, it was like no more doubt. Like if you see that version of yourself is how I felt, especially like a young child or a teenager, it was like, oh my gosh, all you needed was for somebody to believe you. And you were met with so much doubt. So that's why you continue to carry this is that nobody believed you when you needed them to. So you created self doubt. I again believe that's a defense mechanism, doubting ourselves. And by being present with myself and being kind to myself, at this point, I just understand this is the process. As in, I've had many memories arise at this point that I'm like, this is how it goes. Like I have like a cyclical emotional process I go through now that I can really see a pattern with it. But at the beginning, it was being kind to myself and connecting to that younger version who always deserved somebody to be there for them and to believe them.
Yeah. Wow, that is powerful. Can you share a moment when self-trust felt like it clicked? Like when you knew you could rely on your own inner voice again?
I feel like this happens just in day to day, like
Mm.
learning. It's like I'm getting quicker with it. Like I used to, let me think. I would say the spring I went through really taught me I can trust myself. I ended up in some relationships and some partnerships that weren't aligned, but I was able to, like, in the moment, track what didn't feel aligned, and I was able to see pretty quickly when I was going against my gut because it would just continue to feel bad, or then I would get apathetic, and I was able to see my own coping strategies that I had spent so many years looking at in play. And so it was a hard spring, honestly, to go through some relationships where I was like, I thought I outgrew this, but humbling as well, where it's like, actually, the human journey is that you meet somebody and you want to connect with them. So you do let them in. And then it's through that connection that then we learn, can I trust you or not? We have to let people in. And it's not our fault if somebody's not trustworthy or if somebody's not who we thought they were. It's just in the moment being like, oh, I thought you were somebody else, and believing yourself and not like doubting yourself. It's like in the moment being like, oh, that's a weird thing to say. Huh. And not like going into like a story. Like I used to go into narratives. I used to go into fantasy. Like I said, like I used to be like, oh, that's not what they mean. No,
Mhm.
trust what somebody says to you. And it's don't
Yeah.
blame yourself, but just trust how you take that in the moment. Did that
Yeah.
feel good or not for you? And trust people's actions.
So
That's what
true.
I've really been learning is, oh, if I see what you did clearly, then I can trust my own thermometer read of the situation.
Yeah, something I've said for a while now is people will show you who they are. And it's so true. Like we do, like at least I know for myself, it was very hard to learn how to open up and to trust people and let anybody near me. I'm also a Capricorn though, so I don't know if that ties in there.
I'm like, I'm a Scorpio. We're also slow to
Oh
trust.
yeah, yeah. So it took a while, but eventually I got to a place where I was like, I don't want to continue like feeling alone. I want to have people around me. I want to have community. I want to have relationships. In order to do that, you have to let people in. And it's exactly what you're saying. Like, let people in, but 100% trust your instincts. They will show you who they are. Don't question it and trust what is coming up for you in your body, like how you feel when you're with that person or when you leave that person.
Yeah, and for me, for a long time, sorry, I heard an echo. For me, for a long time, I trusted other people over myself. And so that led me into situations where it wasn't aligned for me or it wasn't good for me because I believed somebody else over myself. And self trust is learning that you're the authority of your life. You are the leader of your life. You know the compass for your own life. And by not trusting somebody or somebody not being aligned for you, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. Like that's where the judgments come in. You don't have to create a whole story around why you were talking to somebody and they gave you a weird feeling or like the ick. You don't have to create a story and you don't have to judge them. You can just be like, not for me, and then you just pivot and move in a new direction. And so that's part of the self-trust for me is like honing time and time again, oh yeah, I can trust myself. I can trust my inner compass. It's okay if somebody is for me or isn't for me. I don't have to create a story around it. It's just listening to the body like over and over again. I guess that was a very long way of answering your original question, which it's the body. Listening to my body is what time and time again is what taught me to trust myself.
Yeah. So how do you think we can really start to feel and notice our body? Like I know we've talked about yoga. That's is what it was for me. I'm wondering if you have other ways that can really help people check in with our body. I feel like we get so outside of it. We're in our head or maybe even above. It's hard to come back into the body. And not only that, but once you're back in the body to actually become aware of the sensations and to be able to put a name to it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yes, I do know what you mean because I'm thinking about how it is hard to put a name to our emotions, especially when they're new and they haven't come up before. Now, as I mentioned, it gets easier. It's because now I know what certain emotions feel like. But that's not true at the beginning. I really think one of the first steps is learning how to slow down. And so
Right.
for you, it sounds like it was yoga. For me, it was meditation, but it's finding ways for you to slow down. And I'm a broken record at this point about this piece, but and get off the cell phone Get off
Oh,
your phone, disconnect from technology, and be with yourself. And for so many people today, that alone is terrifying. But you are going to hear yourself clearer and
mm,
feel yourself easier if you are not connected to technology
yeah,
because it just distracts us so many times. And so I find if you're struggling to be with your feelings, I would ask you, how often are you on your phone and how often are you finding ways to not be? Like for me, currently, I play the piano in the
mm,
mornings, and that's my meditative practice these days, is that it connects me to what I think is the left and the right side of the brain. It's like it wakes up the critical thinking, but also it's creative. So it's like this back and forth process, and I find it grounds me in the mornings. So it doesn't have to be meditation or yoga. It's like finding what's best for you. I like to go on walks without
mhm,
my phone. And at first, it's funny, I feel this little, like, disconnect, like, my mind's going crazy, like, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, why don't I have my phone? I'm bored." And then I settle. And I think so many
mm,
people run during that almost chaotic period, but you do settle. Even in the mornings playing the piano, I have a crazy to-do list. And I'm like, you're just gonna play the piano. And my mind goes crazy and then it settles. And it's understanding that the mind going crazy, again, you won't be there forever. It will settle. It's like I view it as like going through fight or flight. Like you
mm,
want to run from being with yourself, then you fight yourself on it in the mind, and then you settle into the
mm.
moment.
That's I really like that you put that like that, and I can completely relate to that experience, especially the going for a walk with no phone. Although for me, it was about safety, like and it not necessarily that the area that I'm in is unsafe. I mean, some people might consider it that, but it's more so that I felt safer if I had it with me. So now often I will still have it on me, but I don't allow myself to take it out of my pocket or out of my purse or whatever I have on me. Unless it's necessary. But there is like that piece for me where it's just like peace of mind. Um but yeah, I completely know what you mean. I there have been times where I will get on a binge scrolling session. This thankfully does not happen to me often, but when you're doing that, you can like, I can literally feel the disconnect. Like, and then when you finally put your phone down, for me, it's like I can take a breath again. That's that's how I would explain it, is that I actually feel like and now I'm curious if this really happens, but I feel like when I'm on it, it's almost like I'm holding my breath, or maybe I'm breathing really shallow or something, and then when I put my phone down, it's like a full breath in. It's refreshing.
Yeah, and I think with the apps, they're overstimulating.
Mm,
And so much of healing in the present moment is a calm nervous system. And
mhm,
they dysregulate our nervous system. Like for me, similar to you, when I'm scrolling TikTok and I don't have the apps on my phone because like I'll admit I will scroll for too long, like an amount of time that makes me uncomfortable. They're designed to be addictive. I used to
uh-huh,
like make myself feel bad. You have to learn to moderate. It's like, no, this is designed to be addictive. I don't know how to moderate. I just don't engage. But with the scrolling, I would go through all these different emotions. Like I would feel like I'd be laughing, then I'd be crying, then I'd be angry, then I'd be confused. And that was like cycling me up here,
yeah.
where it's like when you put it down, it's like, oh, what's mine? What's true for me? Like, how do I feel? And I find that the apps can make that difficult, or social media can make that difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Many survivors feel shame or blame themselves for what happened. We talked about that a little bit. How has the self-compassion piece shifted your own healing?
Self-compassion was probably the thing that changed my life and I would say saved my life, was
Mm,
learning how to be kind to myself. It did not help me in any way to beat myself up for something that wasn't my fault. Self-compassion also taught me that it wasn't my fault. The more that I really, because again, it's a narrative you hear all the time. It's not your fault. And when I was blaming myself, I had all these buts, or I was like, okay, this person says it's not my fault, but like they don't know my story, they don't know what I like me. And time and time again, by being kind to myself and looking at the truth of the situation, it taught me that it wasn't my fault. And I wish I could tell every survivor of every violent crime that it wasn't their fault. But unfortunately, it is really an inner journey. And I say unfortunately, but it's also a gift in a way, because by learning how to tell myself that, it's like it's so true for me. Like, you can't take that truth from me because it's mine, because I worked for it, because I was kind to myself and I sat with all the pain, that you can't take that from me. Or if somebody was just to externally validate me, it's very helpful, don't get me wrong, but it's
For
not
sure.
mine until I fully feel it within my body. And for me, self compassion, just learning to be kind to myself. I didn't have anybody who was compassionate growing up. It
Yeah.
just wasn't something I grew up around, compassion. I wouldn't say every single person was mean, but compassion was something I had to learn as this new skill. And it's baffles me in a way that we live in a world that's not very compassionate, because it's not hard to be kind to yourself and one another. But then at the same time, it is if you have never experienced that.
That is very true. And I was gonna say, I feel like the other part that kind of ties in there, like you were saying that when you do the work for yourself, then you can really own it. I feel like that also is a huge building block for the self-trust that once you kind of go through it, then it actually builds that trust in yourself as well.
Yeah, I always go back to Brene Brown talking about trust is like a marble jar, and we have a marble jar. And if when we meet somebody, they do trustworthy acts that help us to put marbles in the jar and to build that trust. We don't want to just give them a full jar of marbles and say, like, I blindly trust you, which is what we so often do. Real trust is built over time. And if somebody does something that hurts you, you take a marble out of the jar. And it's about over time, is the jar more full or more empty? And it's not taking away the jar at the first thing somebody does. Like, say somebody said they'd pick you up at the airport and they don't, you don't have to abandon them immediately. But it's like over time, is that like the 10th time they've done something that broke your trust? Or is that the first time and you can be understanding? It's more viewing trust as this slowly built. And we also do that with ourselves. And I think that it's like self esteem for me. Like, a lot of people are like, why do I have low self esteem? It's like, well, have you built your self esteem? Like, self-esteem is something we build over time by proving to ourselves that we can overcome challenges. Trust is similar. Are you listening to yourself? Are you respecting yourself? Are you being kind to yourself? And that builds trust with yourself. If you are always listening to other people, which is what I did for a very long time, I only took the other words of people. I was abandoning myself over and over again. And I had to learn to see why I did that so I could be kind to myself and not blame myself or beat myself up for that. But it's like a taught mechanism. That's the other thing with so many of these things, is we're taught it by our parents or by society or by the groups we grow up in. So the more you see the bigger picture, the more you're also able to be kind to yourself.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I also found compassion to be one of the most challenging things to bring into my life, but also because you have to let go of the blame piece. Like, in order to be compassionate, you have to stop blaming yourself. So that was really hard to bring in. But when I got to that point, it was also one of the biggest healing moments or tools, if you want to put it that way, like compassion as a tool. It really is. Were there practices or rituals that helped you soften toward yourself during hard moments?
I think for me, it continues to be that meditation. It continues to be slowing down and connecting back to myself, that it makes it easier for me to, if I'm having like a really hard moment, right? In the moment, I can be kind to myself at this point. I can talk myself through things, but sometimes you're just having a hard day and it just requires me slowing down, sitting with myself and meditating, meditation and just connecting back to my inner world. But also, sometimes my meditations are guided and it's going on a little journey with like an inner child. And sometimes my meditations are connecting back to the body, like feeling my feet, feeling my shins, like the body connection meditations. I actually did your five sense meditation that you did recently, and I found that helpful. I love the five senses. Connecting back to our senses is really helpful when we're having those hard moments.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked that. That actually came out of a moment for me because I was having a really hard time. I was like, I need something." And so I went through a practice, and then at the end of it, I was like, think I need to record this.
I'm glad you did. I found it helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, good. If a survivor listening right now is struggling to offer themselves compassion, where do you suggest they begin?
If you're having trouble giving yourself compassion, I would recommend reaching out to community. So if you have a loved one who can support you, or I've found therapy to be helpful, I know people who work with coaches, but finding a person to help you through this if you're having trouble navigating it by yourself. I find listening to other survivors' stories sometimes really helpful and then also sometimes really hard. Sometimes it's too hard to listen to someone else's story because I have to be with my own. But finding an outside person, because like I said, when you connect back to self, it's yours. But there are times where we just need somebody to like hold our hand or to give us a hug and know we're not alone. We're not awful. That was one of my narratives. I thought I was the worst person in the world, which sounds so vain at this point, but it was so real for me. And I don't think I'm alone in thinking I'm the worst person in the world. It's like we go through these things that are so horrible. And truly, the pain and the isolation is what causes it to be worse. Like when we feel alone in it and isolated in it, I find that to be just as traumatic as the traumatic incident itself. That's one of the reasons I started New View Advice and I create content for the healing journey is that I'm just looking to help others to feel less alone because I felt so isolated on my own journey.
No, exactly. It's the same with this podcast. I like we talked about earlier, I felt so alone in it and because I had never really known anybody who was experiencing what I experienced. And then when I finally got to a place where I could allow myself to be vulnerable and talk about things, it was like, okay, I have to share this. Like other people need to know. If you could go back to Amanda in high school, carrying all that pain and confusion, what would you want her to know?
I'm like, you're going to make me cry. I would tell her it wasn't her fault. I would hold her hand. I have done many a meditation, some of them peaceful, some of them violent. Honestly, I think it's part of the healing journey that you go back and you live out that scenario every time, every way, which way it needs to for your own healing. But at this point, I would tell her that she's fantastic. I love her so much. And that she doesn't understand why this happened. She'll probably never understand why that happened, but that she will find a way to create meaning and purpose from it.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. For anyone listening who feels lost in their healing journey, what's the most important thing you'd want them to carry away from this conversation?
That you're not alone, as we've talked about, but also that you deserve the kindness that we've talked about. You deserve the self compassion. You deserve to heal. And I would ask you if you're feeling lost, is there a feeling that you're really struggling with? Is it that you feel alone? But get curious about what that lost piece is and maybe try something new. For me, I've tried like every healing modality. And the key to healing is that I've needed every healing modality. There isn't one magic bullet. So maybe you've been doing one thing for a really long time and maybe it's time to pivot and try something new. And I invite you to explore that. Some of the healing modalities are fun. Sound baths are fun. I used to do horse therapy. That was really fun. Creativity is a fun way for me to connect back to myself. I do watercolors. That really helps me to ground my nervous system. I just find ways to like I said, slow down. But if you're feeling lost also, it's part of the journey. Like, I also wanna say that, like, I always say it's like, it's hard to see the forest for the trees. Like, when you're lost in the forest, you can't see how far you've come. And if you're listening to this podcast, trust me, you've overcome stuff, you're moving forward, you're on the path, but when you're lost, you don't know that like the next step is like right around the corner. You think that you're going to once again be here forever. You're going to feel lost forever. And in my journey, I still feel lost all the time. I don't understand the point of a lot of things still that I will never understand, but I get caught in that narrative of like, what's the point until I see the bigger picture where it's like, I was focusing on the wrong thing. It wasn't about that point. It was about like me connecting back to self or something like that. So if you're feeling lost, we're all a little lost.
It's so true. Yes, it's so true. Okay, Amanda, our final question. What does life after trauma mean to you?
I think life after trauma is when the trauma stops controlling you. I talk about in my reflection series, I share the moments I knew I was a survivor. And the moments I knew I was a survivor is when I could see everything I had been through and how it no longer defined me. It didn't mean it didn't impact me ever, but it no longer felt like it controlled my life in a way that would like I couldn't control. For a long time I drank. I've been sober for a couple years. And that was one of the things that kept me a little stuck and always feeling like alcohol was out of my control. I had to give it up. That's something that's true for me and my life is better without it. But it's life after trauma for me is like when I look back and it's like, "Oh, that doesn't control me anymore." I used to live in this place that felt like I always viewed it a bit like slavery. Like I felt like a slave. Like I felt like I was a slave to my pain, to the past, to these fears. And the more I heal in life after trauma is like embracing freedom, where it's like, okay, this is up, but I have the tools. I know how to move forward. I know how to navigate this in a new way. And I also freedom to me is also allowing all my feelings and no longer judging them. For me along my journey, I've had the feelings of vengeance, I've had the feelings of hatred. Those are feelings I suppressed for a really long time because I labeled them as like what bad people felt.
Yeah.
And again, what we talked about at the beginning is it's like we're human. I have a violent mind sometimes because I've been through violence. That is just that happens. That's a reality of it. And I don't act on those violent thoughts, but when I suppress them, I was suppressing a part of myself that just needed to be expressed, and I usually express that part through art, through poetry and things like that, but life after trauma is finding that freedom.
Yeah, I love that. And the anger piece, I do want to add on to this that I completely anger is okay. It is natural. You actually need it. And for me, how I work through anger, especially when it's really overpowering and intense, um, I beat up my bed. I will go into my bedroom and I will grab a pillow and I will just start slamming that thing against my bed until all of that anger has drained, and usually I just start crying at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, I love that you say that because anger, so many times it does need that physical aspect. Like it needs, you throw something, find a safe way. Used to throw rocks in the ocean when I lived in LA. Like it's
Yeah,
finding that physical practice because it moves it, right? Like we
yeah.
talked about how you won't be here forever. That anger, it does. I find that one specifically, it needs a movement. Like it needs,
Yes. You have to move it out. Yeah,
yeah,
have to. And for me, with anger, it is so intense that normally, so like other emotions, I can regulate myself by going for a walk or doing yoga or anything like that. Anger is one of those that it's not even touched by a walk or yoga. If I get to the point where I'm angry, then it has to be something that's really like, yeah. Yeah. Like, which is why I beat up my bed.
no, I love that you say that too because I think women struggle with anger. Like I look back and I think one of the reasons I lived in fantasy and I told myself things weren't so bad was to avoid anger. It was a feeling that I didn't think you were supposed to feel for many different reasons, but it's a powerful feeling.
Yeah.
Like my anger always has a message for me, like
Yeah.
that a boundary's been crossed or that I wasn't seeing something clearly and I was going into that fantasy. Oftentimes that's when my anger pops up these days when I try to like gloss over something and be like, "It's fine." My anger is like, "It's not fine."
It's not.
But it like, I always feel like a burning it burns through, and it's powerful, and I think that it's important that we find healthy ways to feel it because it's again, it's human to feel anger. It's not just a male emotion, or it's not just for bad people or whatever you might tell yourself. I told myself, I think that, like, women didn't feel anger for different reasons, childhood, but
Yeah.
it's we all feel anger.
Yeah.
It's
No,
human.
exactly. For me, it was always that it's a bad emotion. Like, if you feel angry, it's because you're psycho.
Yeah.
That was the story that I had in my head for a long time.
I'm
But
like, "Yeah, I
no,
can
that
relate
is
to that
not the
one. Yeah, you're
case.
a crazy person. Only crazy people feel anger."
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So Hey guys, it's Editing Jess. Our conversation with Amanda got cut off at the end due to a technical issue. Well, I am just coming in here to close out the episode. Do me a favor, and whatever you found to be most helpful or that you resonated with the most, drop it in the comments or send me a message. I would love to hear. Until next time, take care of your mind, body, and soul.